Hey, Dan here. We're going to take apart an STG58 lower today, just to try and give you all a hand with how they come apart. This is a metric lower, Austrian made, got US trigger parts in it from DS Arms, Austrian buttstock, Austrian pistol grip. We're going to do a complete teardown on it to strip lower and then reassemble it. I have taken one of the rear side screws out just to make the rear side easier to take off. Sometimes you will have to remove both of them in order to get the sight to slide out one side to the other. And this one does have the tension screw or tension spring in the bottom of it, so when you're screwing your side screws in and out, it will make a clicking noise, and that's just to help maintain the sight. Alright, what we're going to do first is safety selectors in the fire position. We're going to go ahead and get the hammer into the fired position, and we're going to pop out your trigger return spring assembly. Right. A lot of times it'll impact your strike plate on the rear. You've got three components to it. You've got the cup, spring, and the rod. Once that is out, flip your safety to the 12 o'clock position, pull it out. Notice there is a tab on the safety that coincides with the slot on the lower. Since that's out, reach inside, you have a retaining plate that locks the trigger pin and the hammer pin in place. It removes to the rear, slot for the hammer pin, that's a slot for the trigger pin, that's the hole that the safety goes through. Now you can take your hammer out, hammer pin, hammer. You want to keep a little tension on your sear because there is a spring behind it. Pins out, sears out, and your sear spring and plunger. Then you can pop your trigger loose, trigger lifts out. Right. That's pretty much it on taking these parts out. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the pistol grip. Standard metric has a stud coming off the bottom of the receiver. You've got a pistol grip nut that holds the pistol grip in place. This is your pistol grip nut. Some of them are a little more tapered at the top. The ones from FN have a smaller diameter. Pull your trigger guard off and your trigger return spring and rod. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the tang screw for the buttstock. Pull that out. Notice this one's very short. It's standard on Austrian STGs. You go ahead and pull the butt pad off, slotted screw. Takes a little longer because I'm doing this for the camera versus doing it for myself. This is your buttstock tool. Okay, it's used to remove your recoil spring and the nut. Okay, get it in place, put a little tension on it because the spring is compressed. So, got a little tension on it. M-bells are somewhat notorious for the recoil spring tube coming out with the recoil spring. It'll pop loose inside the buttstock. I'll get my washer off the spring, put it with the recoil spring nut. Goes there. Alright, buttstock slides off. Now we're going to take out the release latch lever assembly. Got a small screw or rod with screw threads on the end of it that locks your release latch lever into the lower. Goes into a slot in the release latch lever. Small screwdriver is best for this because the recoil spring tube can get in the way of a larger one. Alright, it's all the way out. Just going to lift that out. Once that's out, you can take a screwdriver and just pop your release latch lever on the opposite side. That'll pull it loose. Lift it out with a screwdriver. This is the lug that goes into your plunger, into the side of it, and actually moves it back and forth. Since that's out, go ahead and push your retaining pin out. That's what locks your plunger assembly in. This pin sits in the back and will actually rotate in the groove on your retaining pin right here. You can see that they kind of fit together like that. Now we're going to do a reassembly on this. Reassembly is going to take just a little bit longer than the assembly, than the disassembly. You want to make sure this goes in with this part of the plunger parallel with this back plate. That'll make it easier when you go to put your latch lever back in. Alright. Put your retaining pin through. That'll keep it in place. I just use my thumb and push this in. If you notice, the catch lever or the catch plunger comes back and is slotted to go over the pin. That way it actually releases your upper from your lower. Slid that back in, back and forth. Can't find my regular screwdriver that I use for this. About the same size handle, but the actual blade is about 3 inches long. Alright, that's back together. Now we can go ahead and put our buttstock back on. I recommend putting your stop screw in place now, because trying to put it on with the pistol grip on can be a bit of a pain. Plus, when you've got this on, it actually makes putting the recoil spring back inside a little bit easier. What you want to do, you've got a hole in the back end. You can see all the way through it. You'll drop your plunger in. Slide it down in there and put a little bit of tension on it, otherwise it will shoot out, just like that. And they tend to go a ways when they do come out. First one I ever took out, I did on my front porch, and I've still got the marks on the ceiling of the front porch from the thing hitting it and bouncing off it, and they're kind of greasy and dirty. So just be aware that can happen. Alright, going to put the screw back in. Standard thread, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Okay, buttstock assembly's back on. Now we're going to go ahead and put our trigger return spring back in. It's on there. Trigger guard goes in this notch. Corresponding tying here goes over. This is actually a G1 for Israeli style trigger guard, and you can tell that because it's got the cutout here to go over your return spring to allow it to pass through. A lot of them don't. A lot of the later models are cut off right here. This one's actually rounded on the edges So at some point this thing's been swapped out for this Israeli or early Belgian model. And you can see the cutout for the return spring for the trigger return plunger. Alright, then we're going to go ahead and put our trigger or pistol grip back on. It goes on like so. It is at an angle, so it can be kind of fun to get on the first time or two you do it. You want to flop down inside the grip and you'll flip it back out and go to put it on, it'll flip off and you'll say bad things about people. And on the Para model, it actually uses a screw to go up because it's got a threaded insert in the bottom, threaded lower made specifically for that. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and take our sear spring and sear plunger, put them inside the trigger. Now, put my finger over the front of that. The trigger does have a detent milled into the back of it that coincides with the rounded front of the trigger return spring. So we want to get that in there, in place. Now, the sear also has a milled cup on it, made to go work as a guide with the sear spring and sear plunger. That sits in there like this. Pull it back, get it in place. Take your trigger pin, which is a smaller diameter pin, push that through all the way in. Take your hammer, push against the sear, against the nose of the sear with your hammer. Hammer pins in. Now we can put our retaining plate back in. Alright. Our safety goes back through. That's what keeps the retention plate in place. And we're going to reassemble our hammer return spring. It's got a kind of a strange shape to it. This is made to go into a slot in the hammer, which is right here. Actual Israeli model, early Israeli model, well, Israeli models had a pin that captured that into the hammer assembly. Right. Slide the rear sight back on, then you put your rear sight screw back in, and you're pretty much done. And hey, it works. How about that? That's pretty much it. If you've got any questions, hit me up on the link on YouTube. I've built a few thousand of these, so I'm kind of familiar with them. And I'll be adding some more videos, troubleshooting, so on and so forth. Thanks for watching.